Hey guys, what's up? Zijin here with Giz China, and this is the Doogee Y6 Max, the biggest phone I've reviewed to date, or maybe the smallest tablet I've reviewed to date. There is also a version of this phone that has glassless 3D, but I don't have that one yet, so this one is the one without. Specs here are nothing special, but in this section of the phone market of, massive phones, there actually isn't that much competition. So specs here are actually pretty decent. You have full HD screen, 3GB of RAM, and the MediaTek 6750 processor as well. So let's see if Doogee made a good phone. This is definitely way closer to a small tablet as opposed to a big phablet. I mean, I can't even use this phone properly with two hands as a cell phone. I gotta use it as a tablet, and I've dropped it numerous times on my face when I was trying to use it in bed, and it hurts because it's actually pretty heavy as well. That being said though, the bezels on this phone are pretty small, which leads to this phone being compact. Still though, I find it hard to use this phone, especially trying to reach the fingerprint sensor on the back of the phone because my hands are small, so I have a very difficult time of reaching the fingerprint sensor and placing my finger there properly for it to recognize my finger. But good thing the accuracy on this phone is good, but we'll talk about that later. But all that aside, the build quality on the Doogee is pretty good. You have a metal backplate with the two plastic antenna bands on the top and bottom, so this phone definitely won't lose against any other metal phone either. We have a full HD screen on a massive 6.5-inch display, and I know a lot of you guys would probably want at least a 2K resolution on this phone, but you know what, 1080p on 6.5 inches still looks perfectly fine. There's no need to bump up the resolution. Colors look fine, not amazing, but fine. Detail is there, but it doesn't get very bright, around 450 nits, which means that in direct sunlight, you're gonna have a bit of trouble seeing the screen. You might need to use your hand to, shade your phone before you can see it in direct sunlight. There is no Gorilla Glass on this phone either as well. The speakers are surprisingly decent. Volume is okay. There are a lot of other phones that are louder than this phone, but this phone is plenty loud by itself. Quality is what surprised me quite a bit. Audio is actually pretty crisp, and mids and highs are good, and there is a surprising amount of bass in this phone as well. Overall, I'm a very satisfied customer of the audio here, so have a listen for yourself.
You look cute today, Dwight.
Thanks, girl. So, yesterday, Dwight found half a joint in the parking lot. Which is unfortunate because, as it turns out, Dwight finding drugs is more dangerous than most people using drugs. I'm just saying that you can't be sure that it wasn't you. That's ridiculous. Of course it wasn't me. Marijuana is a memory loss drug, so maybe you just don't remember. I would remember. Well, how could you if it just erased your memory? That's not how it works. Now, how do you know how it works? Knock it off. Okay, I'm interviewing you.
No, you said that I'd be conducting the interview when I walked in here. Now, exactly how much pot did you smoke?
Battery life here is great, about the same as my Doogee Y6 Max, which in turn is around the same area as the Redmi 3. So the Redmi 3 had great battery life, so did the Doogee Y6 Max. This one has great battery life as well. I was able to get 6 hours of screen on time over a 15-hour day with about 10% left, so even heavy users will have a hard time killing this phone in just one day. Light and medium users can expect 2 days, maybe even 3 days, but that might be stretching it. But you also have Quick Charge or Mediatek's Pump Express for you to charge your phone up very quickly as well. This phone is pretty much a stock Android 6.0 with a very light Doogee skin on top of it. They didn't really add much else, but the aesthetics, I really don't like it. A different launcher solves that problem. The fingerprint sensor is fine. It's accurate, which is very important because it's very hard to reach the sensor to place your finger on it very accurately, so you kind of have to touch it and hope it goes through, and it usually does, which means that this fingerprint sensor is definitely very accurate. Speed-wise, it's not as fast as the fastest fingerprint sensors out there, but it's definitely good enough for everyday use. I definitely would have preferred the fingerprint sensor to be on the front of the phone, but they probably didn't do that because then they would probably have to make the phone even longer than it already is. Actual use is quite smooth. Launching apps and multitasking is all very good as well, especially because you have 3GB of RAM, which means that it can store most of that in the memory, and the only time you might overflow out of that would be if you're playing multiple intense games at once, which I really don't expect anyone to do at any point in their lives, unless they're testing a phone like me. So speaking of games, you can play pretty much any game you want on this phone with no major slowdowns. There might be hiccups here and there, but you really shouldn't have any problem playing a game on this phone. You have the 2G, 3G, and 4G bands in this phone. They work fine, they work well on my carrier, but do make sure it works on your carrier because the network bands on this phone is a little bit different compared to other Chinese phones' network bands. The camera quality really surprised me, maybe because it had the Samsung 3L8 sensor, which really helps it to get some pretty good photos in daylight conditions. Detail is captured well and colors are generally reproduced very nicely, but you need a lot of light to do that. Once you get into nighttime situations, the quality takes a nosedive and it starts getting pretty bad. The front-facing camera is only 5 megapixels and it doesn't have that many pixels for you to play around with, so it barely passes for Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, and you can't really use it for anything else more serious than that. The rear camera video quality is pretty decent. You get a decent level of quality for a 1080p video, but it's obviously not 4K, which a lot of other phones are moving on to, but this is a budget phone, so you can't really expect 4K in this camera. Overall, this is a good tablet. Phablet. Doogee did a great job with this phone, and honestly, there aren't any downsides except for maybe the camera, but every other Chinese phone pretty much suffers from that issue as well, especially in this price range. You get a full HD screen, you get decent performance, and you get great battery life as well. If you're looking for a huge phone, which I personally would never do, but if you are looking for a huge phone, you don't have that many options. There is the Blueboo Maya Max, but I still recommend this Doogee Y6 Max over the Blueboo because the Doogee's camera is slightly better than the Blueboo Maya Max's camera. So thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit like, be sure to hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.